And the city of Babylon is where Daniel 5 takes place. It's in this city of Babylon. And now we know the emperor, his name is Belshazzar, all right, in this situation. Now, the Euphrates River runs underneath the wall. Now, I want you to imagine these walls, they were almost impossible for an enemy to attack the city of Babylon, all right? They were 30 feet high, the walls, and they were surrounded by more than 100 strategically placed walls and towers. The walls had more than 100 of these towers around them. Euphrates River ran right underneath the wall and provided constant flow into the city of where Belshazzar was here in Babylon. Now, there was this constant flow of water. It was said that he had so stockpiled food that if an enemy was coming after them and would cut off the food supply, now Babylon was able to stand for at least 20 more years without any food being given to the city. So they felt pretty secure. We got a big wall, we got food, we got everything we need. Now, I want to go through your 5 points today, all right? Every point starts with the letter R. It's easier for me to remember that way, all right? So this whole event in Daniel 5, 1 through 4 is called a night of revelry. They were having a party. This party was going on, all right? So I'm going to read Daniel 5, 1 through 4. And Belshazzar gave a great banquet for 1,000 of his nobles and drank wine with them. While Belshazzar was drinking his wine, he gave orders to bring in the gold and silver goblets that Nebuchadnezzar, his grandfather, had taken from the temple in Jerusalem, so that the king and his nobles, his wives and his concubines, might drink from them. So they brought in the gold goblets that had been taken from the temple of God in Jerusalem. And the king and his nobles, his wives and his concubines, drank from them. As they drank the wine, they praised the gods of gold and silver and bronze and iron and wood and stone. Suddenly, the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall near the lampstand in the royal palace. The king watched the hand as it wrote. His face turned pale, and he was so frightened that his knees knocked together and his legs gave way. So we can say it had a physiological response. Something was dramatically going on. And so what started off as just a party became a drunken orgy. They had their wives, their concubines. Now, typically, a wife and a concubine was not invited to these banquets. But for some reason, they were invited to this banquet. It was probably going to because Belshazzar knew this is the last party I'm going to go to. All right? So he realized the Babylonian Empire now was about to come to a total end. The city of Babylon was now going to go away and become a part of the Medes and the Persians. All right? So now you're seeing the situation. 1,000 nobles, leading men and wives and concubines. Now, as I began to see all this and study a little bit about this, the king was setting the pace for a drunken behavior. You know, the Christian Standard Bible talks about that they had overindulged in alcohol. And I want you to understand, I don't see any good can come from alcohol. But what happens in this situation, you can see the behavior, you can see the consequences, and you can see the turmoil that took place in Belshazzar's party, all right? He was setting the pace. He was so drunk, he was losing his sense of decency. When he lost all logical thinking, what did he do? But he called the servants, go get the gold goblets, those precious goblets, those goblets that were taken from the temple where the Jehovah God, the God of Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God. Bring them in here. And so he began to deface. He began to humiliate. He began to show God is not really God. The multiple gods that we worship, they are so much superior to the God of Israel, to Jehovah God. And so that whole place was taking place for the degradation, for the disrespect of God. So as you see this, and these orders are brought in, and they bring them in, and they begin to drink. And I think the only thing we need to understand at this point, it takes us back 65 years when Daniel was taken captive. He was brought into Babylon, and these sacred tools or instruments that was in the temple of God in Jerusalem, they were used to defame Jehovah. And they were used as if they were just paper cups. But God had established this process. And you know what, my friends? When God establishes something, you and I need to be respectful. We need to be respectful for that which God has established. Point number 2, it was a night of reflection, a night of rebellion. That's verses 5 through 9. This was an act of rebellion against the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Remember the phrase, you're either for me or what? Or you're against me, all right? These drunks were praising the gods of the gold and of the silver, wood, bronze, iron, and stone. You know what? There's no God in those cups. So why were they doing it? They were showing disrespect for Daniel's God, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's God. No respect at all. And this is what they were doing. Now, Satan does not want us to see the glory of Jehovah. I want to repeat that. Satan does not want us to see the glory of God. When you can see the glory of God, you can join in singing as we do here every Sunday morning. We can lift up God's name. We can smile on our faces and raise our hands and scream hallelujah, and we worship the God that's here. But you see, they don't want to do that. They wanted to discourage and make fun of Jehovah and the gods of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Satan doesn't want that, all right? So you think about this. They said 1,000 nobles, but the estimate over 2,000 people were here. Can you imagine how many goblets it would take to drink for that number of people? Man, I tell you what, they became out of touch with reality. Then the finger of a human hand appears. I want to notice something here. You didn't see an arm. You didn't see a body. All you saw was a finger writing on the plaster wall. Then I want you to catch this. There was a lampstand over there. You know why that is? They wanted to make sure they see that. God is saying, I want you to make sure that if you see anything in this party tonight, you're going to see that handwriting on the wall. What they're saying is, you're going to see the presence of God. You're going to see that God is doing something here right now. So in the midst of the destruction of our country, in the midst of the discretion of people going away from God, I want you to know God's still writing. And God's still shining a light on this truth. God's still shining a light. You know where He's shining? On you. He wants the world to see you. The deep inside you, there is an avalanche of love for God. He wants the world to see the action, that what we think and what we feel and what we do is shining out for God in this moment. It's a sobering event. He sobered up really quick. He had lost the ability to think clearly because of his intake, but now he's suddenly sobering up, at least to know what's going on. Crises have taken a way of sobering people up. Belshazzar saw what was happening. The blood drained from his face. He sobered up. He literally turned pale. He was so pale, he was frightened up. His knees knocked, they said. The words written in Babylonian alphabet was unintelligible to the king. He calls for help. He gets his wise men, his enchanters, the diviners. He brings them up. He offers them amazing things. I said, I put a purple robe on you, which is a sign of royalty. I'm going to put a gold chain around your neck, and I'm going to make you third in power to this Babylonian kingdom. I want you to see all that. And you know what? No matter what he offered, the world didn't have an answer.